Chairman and members of the Rotary Club. It is nearly 2 years since I addressed the Rotary Club of Seoul, and it is a great pleasure and a great honor to speak to you again. This is a most appropriate forum for what I have to say today. Rotary International stands for human values, for mutual helpfulness among people, and for the triumph of sound economic and political ideals over materialism and sheer force. The United States Foreign Aid Program embodies on a national scale these same high principles. In my year-end report on United States aid to Korea in January, I described some of the considerable economic gains that have been made by the Republic of Korea. The country is nearing self-sufficiency in food. More electricity is being produced in these boundaries than ever before. Production of coal is at an all-time high. The Korean national railways have been rehabilitated. A building boom is underway, to mention only some of the accomplishments. These are very real and tangible gains in which we can all take pride. More food, more electric power, more coal, a transportation system built and re-equipped. These and many other gains are the material foundation upon which the Republic of Korea can build a better economy. But the foundation of progress is not only material. It is also of the mind and of the spirit. The foundation of progress should rest on a bedrock of ideas and principles that can function in a democratic framework. It goes without saying that a country such as the Republic of Korea, which has suffered the bloody ravages and the cruel tyranny of totalitarian communism, must be especially anxious that its economic development shall accord with democratic principles and not follow artificial, autarkic, or autocratic lines. As Secretary of State Dulles pointed out in a recent speech at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Soviet foreign policy has assumed a new look. There is less stress on violence and more emphasis on trade and economic assistance. Nikita Khrushchev, head of the Communist Party, has challenged the free world to competition to determine whether a communist dictatorship or a democratic free enterprise can better serve the economic needs of a nation. In scores of the free nations of the West, the decision long since has been written so plainly that, as the Bible says, wayfaring men, though fools, shall not err therein. The free economy produces a better physical life. Beyond this, and more important, the democratic economy protects the life, liberty, and personal dignity of the individual. It gives him the best opportunity to develop economically, politically, spiritually, to the limit of his capabilities. These are values which are worth great effort to achieve and preserve. They constitute a faith for which free men are ready to risk their lives. We are confident that the Republic of Korea, among the most proved and trusted enemies of communism, is profoundly concerned to demonstrate the superiority of the free economic system. In this sense, it seems to me, Korea is called to a new historic mission in the service of liberty, a mission hardly less challenging than the one it faced and fulfilled in resisting communist aggression for 3 long years, from 1950 to 1953. What is this challenge, this gauntlet thrown down at the feet of the Korean people? It is no less a challenge than this: to show by example to several hundred million Asian people who have recently achieved independence that their welfare is served not by pursuing the slavish mirages of communism, but by standing upon an economic system that can preserve human liberty. To give such a demonstration, to afford such an example, Korea should, of course, prepare as fast as may be possible to dispense with foreign economic aid. To this end, Korea is called upon to depend more and more on its own efforts to sustain its economy. It is the essential purpose of United States foreign aid to help a recipient country to become self-supporting. Neither the United States nor Korea wants American aid to go on indefinitely. Can Korea become self-supporting? In an interview last summer, I said, I don't think there's any question but that the Republic of Korea can become self-supporting. With the progress made since then, I am surer than ever that this is true. Few countries, it seems to me, have a population more intelligent, more industrious, more thrifty, or better endowed generally for economic progress. The country may not be richly endowed with natural resources, but neither are Sweden, Denmark, or Switzerland. All of them countries lacking in natural resources, yet standing toward the top of the list in per capita income and standard of living. What Korea can do in the future is foreshadowed by what it has done in the past. Since 1953, the Korean textile industry has recovered to the point where there is at least a temporary equilibrium between supply and demand. Since last year, the wholesale price of cotton cloth has fallen 25%. In 2 years, capacity should suffice to raise per capita consumption to 13 square yards of cloth. To the satisfaction of all concerned, privately owned coal mines of Korea have grown to the point where they produce at the rate of 400,000 or 500,000 tons of coal a year, or nearly a third as much as the government-owned Taihan mines. Bicycle plants in Korea are producing more than 42,000 bicycles a year. 21 privately owned machine shops are turning out 1,500 gasoline and diesel engines from 5 to 20 horsepower each, to be used mostly for irrigation and rice polishing. At Yeongdongpo, Busan, and other cities, machine tools are busy turning out steel files, saws, hammers, nozzles, pistons, and oxygen welders. Their quality is presently impaired somewhat by the lack of adequate heat-treating facilities, but that is a detail that will be solved, I'm sure. 2 rubber mills at Busan are producing boots, hot water bottles, lengths of hose, and other consumer goods. Aluminum ingots from Formosa are being processed into kitchen utensils. Automobile parts are made at widely separated plants over Korea. There is the ceramics industry. There are several small steel rolling mills. By looking at the catalog of products exhibited at the Seoul Industrial Fair last fall, I could extend this list indefinitely. But the examples I have already given are more than enough to prove that the Korean people have the ingenuity to overcome great difficulties to get industries started. Shortly after I arrived in Korea, right after the end of the fighting, I was greatly inspired by some things I saw on a visit to Yeongdongpo. There had been no adequate time to rebuild the devastated factories. In spite of this, however, I found a number of small plants operated by private enterprise turning out goods. They were producing these goods in bombed-out buildings with the crudest of patched-up machinery, but still they were producing them. There was a small factory making pumps for irrigation. Next, I came to a forge shop. Following that, there was a plant heating scrap iron and drawing it out into rods, or fashioning it into shapes and plates, mostly by hand. Another plant was turning out nails. Nearby was a small textile mill, its spindles and looms actively turning out cloth. Every one of these plants was privately owned. The government-owned plants in this same area were standing idle. What a demonstration, I thought, of the superiority of individual ownership and private enterprise. What a proof of the ability of a people to get busy on their own private initiative and produce the things which other people need. But in order for the natural forces of progress, the energy and imagination of a talented people to bear a country forward, certain conditions must be provided. If the Korean economy is to make substantial gains toward becoming self-supporting, the first thing needed is an economic environment favorable to private capital formation and its investment in productive enterprises. Such an environment must rest on confidence in the soundness of a government's economic policies. The first test is perhaps the presence or absence of inflation. In my year-end statement, I said that with the provision of $25 million of additional United States aid, and I'm quoting now, I said, Korea should be able to make further progress in bringing the forces of inflation under more effective control, provided other adequate anti-inflationary measures are also taken by the Korean government. That's the end of the quotation. Some progress has been made recently in slowing down inflation. In the year ending last June, the index of wholesale prices rose by a staggering 110%, or at a rate of nearly 10% a month.